So often, the Dark Lords of the Sith travel around with great pomp and spectacle, announcing their departures and arrivals with fanfare and intimidation. To facilitate this, the Sith are known for their massive capital ships, which cast long shadows over the planets they visit, and often contain enough firepower to glass their surfaces as well. But the capital ship is not always the most practical option for travel, especially on a myriad of missions that required a more clandestine approach. Smaller transports and fighters are easily associated more with the humble sojourns of the Jedi, but it was not unheard of for a Sith to design their own personal starships for private business and travel. But of course, just like with everything with the Sith, they have to ensure that even their smaller ships are the most dangerous vessels around. Welcome back to the Archives, Acolytes, and Lore Junkies, and let's begin. Unfortunately for us, there aren't many personal Sith spacecrafts that are spoken of in history. Again, they always did favor the capital ships, but the handful that we do know of contain fascinating insights to the Sith design philosophy, especially when they're forced to compromise their own go big or go home ideology. And the first time we really see a personal starship is in the reconstituted Sith Empire under Emperor Vitiate. This was known as the Fury-class Imperial Interceptor, and it was designed so well that it became the standard issue for travel between all Sith of the Empire. Most of the time, it was the option provided for the Sith Lords of high-ranking status or warriors or inquisitors. The Fury-class Interceptor was not available for just any Imperial agent to use. In keeping with the Empire's culture of Sith dominance, they were exclusively for the savants of the dark side. When one of those touched down on a world, it was meant to be an announcement that your Sith overlord had arrived. During Malgus' time as an apprentice under Darth Vindican, the two utilized a Fury class on all of their infiltration missions. This was the ship used when they invaded the Republic's space station over Korriban. Malgus continued to have these ships in a wide usage under his leadership, and approximately 45 of these vessels were under his command during his final assault on the core that led to the sacking of Coruscant. The Fury-class Interceptor was a very reliable vessel, and it was designed to be more than just a transport. It was an entire mobile base of operations. The interior contained a master cabin for the Sith to whom it belonged, cabins for the ship's crew, a medbay, cargo storage, a large communication center with a holoprojector table, and even a conference room. While it could be piloted by one, the bridge contained 3 chairs, one for a pilot, a co-pilot, and the commanding officer's seat in the center. Despite the ship having so many travel amenities, they were surprisingly formidable in combat. They were armed with the Enmity-class precision laser cannons and heavy seeker missiles as a standard. It also contained thick armor and strong deflector shields. They were capable of dominating smaller starships in dogfights, and could strip the weapons off of capital ships to support allies in larger space duels. However, no two Fury-class interceptors were alike, because they were so highly customizable. As a Sith graduated through the ranks, each one would upgrade and customize their own interceptor to their liking, adding more weapons or increasing shield capacity. The Fury-class interceptor set the standard for what private Sith transports would be moving forward in the timeline. If a Dark Lord were to be moving about, their ships couldn't just be powerful in combat, but they needed to be tricked out with as many conveniences as the space would allow. It's ironic that the Sith often dismiss comforts as a part of their religion, believing that discomfort and pain would progress them in their pursuit of power. But when it comes to their ships, they absolutely spare no expense. This brings us to the era of Darth Bane, where we know of a ship he used quite well, the Valcyn. The Valcyn was a T-class long-range personal cruiser, a starship widely used by the Brotherhood of Darkness during the latter days of the New Sith Wars. From what we understand, the T-class was akin to the Fury class in the way that it was a status symbol. However, not just any Sith used it. Exclusively Sith Lords and Sith Lord apparents were allowed to travel in this ship. In the era of the Brotherhood of Darkness, Sith that were inducted into their order were sorted by their talents and potentials, and there were 3 classes that one could be sorted into: the Marauders, the Assassins, and the Lords. Each class had its own dedicated academy around the galaxy, so instead of being able to rise to the rank of Lord in the Brotherhood of Darkness, Sith were predestined for it based on their potential, and only those emerging from the Sith Lord Academy on Korriban were ever allowed to travel in the T-class cruisers. The specifications of the ship were slim. We know little about its makeup besides that it used ion engines for sublight travel, and the control scheme was a standard easy-to-use type. Some T-classes were equipped with hyperspace-capable message drones that could be launched straight from the ship, but Darth Bane's ship, the Valcyn, was a set apart from even standard T-classes. Originally, the ship had been a gift to Lord Cordus by the founder of the Brotherhood, Lord Khan. Cordus was the headmaster of the Korriban Academy, and Khan wanted to congratulate him for his work on the latest class of apprentices. The Valcyn was one of the finest vessels in the entire Sith fleet, equipped with its latest and most advanced technologies of the era, but unfortunately for Cordus, he would never get the chance to enjoy it. Bane, after returning from a pilgrimage into the Valley of the Dark Lords, decided to reject the heretical teachings of the Brotherhood, who stated that all Sith Lords were equal to one another. Bane made waves by taking the title of Darth, a moniker that set himself above the other Sith Lords, an openly invited challenge. Following this bold apostasy, Darth Bane went to Cordus's personal hangar and stole the Valcyn for himself. And for many months after this would be his main method of transport, as he went from world to world in search of real Sith truths. It was this ship that brought him to Revan's holocron on Lehon, which is what led him to making the Rule of Two. But after Bane destroyed the Brotherhood, he would end up crashing the ship on the moon of Duxun. This had come as a result of the form of psychosis that had afflicted Bane following the detonation of the Thought Bomb. Bane began to be haunted by the mental visages of Lord Khan and the Sith that he had murdered, and he had gone into a frenzy, crashing the advanced cruiser while trying to get the images out of his mind. After losing the Valcyn, Darth Bane would eventually acquire 2 Theta-class T1 vessels. This had come as a result of him becoming a wealthy entrepreneur later in life as his cover. These were luxurious personal shuttles which were the most expensive, top-of-the-line ships on the market. One of them, which he had named the Triumph, would be used as his personal starship. On it, he would find the secret to essence transfer, which granted immortality. The second ship, which he had named the Victory, became the personal starship of his apprentice Darth Zana. But it was the Valcyn that would leave the most impact on the Rule of Two and Sith starship design moving forward in the timeline. It was Darth Tenebrous, the master of Plagueis, who led a double life as Rugus Gnome, a legendary artisanal ship designer with a massive reputation in the galaxy. Tenebrous would design 2 notable ships based on Darth Bane's Valcyn. Tenebrous' own ship doesn't have much of a description, unfortunately, as it was lost early on in the Plagueis novel. In the year 67 BBY, Tenebrous had learned of a cortosis deposit on the planet of Baldemnik and personally journeyed there to survey it with his apprentice and an M2 mining probe droid provided by the Subtext Mining Company. Neither Tenebrous nor Plagueis knew that the droid had been sabotaged. Inside a cave on the side of a deep escarpment on the shore of the Northern Sea, the 2 Sith Lords landed their craft. The sabotaged M2 found a gas pocket, and instead of listening to the orders of its Sith masters, the droid blew up the gas pocket, resulting in the mine collapsing on the ship. This afforded Plagueis the opportunity to finally kill his master, directing the debris from the explosion to fall on Tenebrous. Although the ship was lost in the event, another of Tenebrous' designs survived elsewhere. This is the ship that many of you will recognize, the Scimitar. Many later believed that Wraith Sanar had constructed the ship, because its design was based on one of his prototype star carriers, but he had denied all involvement with its creation. Rugus Gnome had actually been the one to design this prototype, in partnership with the Sanar fleet systems. Tenebrous had actually taken the ship, and modified it to more closely resemble Darth Bane's Valcyn. The Scimitar had a round cockpit that sat at the very top of the ship. Beneath it was a sleeping compartment, holding cells, and storage bays, along with the AFT airlock. The bow of the ship contained a cargo hold with Maul's speeder and probe droids. The Scimitar was a deadly ship that primarily used 6 solar ionized cannons. These were special weapons that could literally bypass deflector shields entirely to melt Durasteel on contact. The cannons on the Scimitar were capable of extending and firing several bursts in the blink of an eye. But what made this ship so notable were its stealth capabilities. Somehow, Tenebrous had gotten hold of the rare Stygium crystals, which was a commodity heavily controlled by the Republic. Using them as its source of power, he created a cloaking device that could create an invisibility field around the ship. It was capable of sneaking through even the most advanced security technologies. Along with this, there were thrust trace dampeners to keep any trail from being created by the ship's engines. Darth Plagueis would use the Scimitar for much of his life, with it actually saving his life once he evaded the nuking of his private moon. Later, he would bequeath it to his own apprentice Darth Sidious. Palpatine himself rarely used the ship, since he didn't often move about as Sidious, rather Palpatine. He was capable of hiding in plain sight normally, so he ended up gifting the ship to Maul, who definitely needed it for all of the stealth infiltration missions he was being assigned to. As a result, Maul himself often referred to the ship as the Infiltrator instead of its given name. Unfortunately, the Scimitar would fall into the hands of the Jedi after the Battle of Naboo. The first person to examine the starship was Council member Tin. As the best pilot of the Jedi Order at the time, he was tasked with examining the ship for any data and securing it. Inside, he found a large number of torture devices and explosives. Within his report, Master Tin also included another disturbing discovery. The ship itself was utterly possessed with the dark side of the Force. Whether it was a design choice by Darth Tenebris to echo the ways of the old Sith, or if the ship had gained power by being passed down from master to apprentice is unknown. But when touching its controls, Tin said this in his report: "All the ship's records have been wiped clean. I have found nothing to identify the Sith Lord slain by Obi-Wan. Although I have disabled the ship's weapons, I am compelled to say that it still poses a great danger, and I recommend that this vessel be placed in the Jedi Council's care. That ship is alive with the dark side, Master Yoda. I can feel it clinging to my robes, and worse, it still tempts me, calling me back with promises of fantastic journeys to the far reaches of the galaxy." However, despite Tin's recommendation, the Jedi had the ship impounded at the Kawat drive yards, but the Scimitar mysteriously vanished en route to Kawat. While its fate remains currently unknown in the lore, there are hints that it remained in Sidious's possession during his tenure as Emperor. And speaking of Sidious, he would also eventually have a few personal ships of his own. Like all Imperial officials, Palpatine rode around in a Lambda-class T-4A shuttle when it came to official business. On the outside, it looked exactly like any of the other Lambda-class shuttles, with its only distinguishing markings being a gray stripe down its nose. However, this shuttle was unique in that it was upgraded with increased armor and shields, along with an active cloaking device. The only beings allowed to pilot this ship were the Royal Guards, or Darth Vader in case of emergencies. But when it came to personal business or pleasure, in canon, Sidious would use his yacht, the Imperialis. This was a sleek, silvery pleasure yacht with swept-back wings. It was a custom job done by Wraith Sanar on Palpatine's direct request. It was one of the fastest ships in the galaxy, capable of outrunning Star Destroyers. When it was stolen and piloted by Lando, the ship was so powerful that it was capable of dragging a Star Destroyer's tractor beams and forcing it to collide with another capital ship. It was also equipped with advanced defensive systems, those that could blast away gravity mines and any other starship that attempted an approach. Although built for pleasure, it followed the Sith design philosophy of being incredibly deadly, all for the sake of Emperor Palpatine's safety. Palpatine personally chose to fill it with his personal treasures, hiding it in a vault inside the yacht. Among the wealth he kept inside of its chamber were Sith artifacts such as ancient lightsabers and the mask of Lord Mummin. To end off today's look in personal starships though, we're going to acknowledge Darth Vader's TIE Advanced. This will bring us full circle to the kind of ship that we began today's excursion on, as this was expressly a military vehicle. Officially it was labeled as the TIE Advanced X-1, but the model owned by Vader was the only one of its kind ever made, as this model was never officially put into production. This TIE was created for Vader by his own specifications. No other starfighter properly fit his new hulking form, and once he actually got it, Vader heavily modified it for his own tastes. Just like Anakin did with his own Jedi starfighters, Vader would often tinker with his ship when he needed a moment to himself, and because of this, he ended up creating one of the deadliest and most efficient starfighters of the entire era. The TIE Advanced featured much greater speed than a typical TIE fighter did, which were already known for their considerable swiftness and maneuverability. This fact becomes more impressive when you learn that Vader was not only able to increase its speed, but also the strength of its hull, with no sacrifice to the ship's movement. For weapons, it was armed with heavy twin blaster cannon and cluster missiles. Unlike other TIE models, the ship contained a shield generator and a hyperdrive. All of this was made possible due to it being powered by a solar ionized reactor, which was a miniature version of what powered Star Destroyers. Vader's TIE Advanced was so revolutionary that Imperial specialists would study it, and from what they learned, they were able to spawn the TIE Avenger, and later, the extremely elite TIE Defender. It was very difficult to fit all of those systems into such a small package when it came to the TIE series. but Vader had made it work just to fit his own preferences, and it ended up overhauling the entire series, changing the production of all future TIEs. This, my friends, is what happens when the Sith are forced to think on the small scale. If they can't go big, they push the boundaries of what's physically possible. They spare no expense, finding or inventing the absolute best technology of the era. They ensure that they will have no issues in their starcraft, and make it somewhere they actually want to spend their time. They make sure that if they are ever caught out in the open without their capital ship, that there is no difference in firepower. So, what are your thoughts about the personal vehicles of the Dark Lords? Do you hope to see more of their smaller ship used or highlighted in the lore later? I particularly find it fascinating that Maul's scimitar has almost a living personality, an identity that may have spawned from the dark side. I would like to see more done with that concept, as the Sith spread their insidious influence to even everyday objects that they use. But let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And until next time, may the Force be with you, join us on our road to 2 million, and have a great day.